some other little issues like that come next year, I just want to remind people I'm going to be a little bit more stricter on some of that, especially the interruption, so that one person can speak at a time, and decorum and some other things we have on the agenda tonight. But I just want to remind us that call to order is what that's meaning. We're coming to order. We're going to be respectful of one another. We're going to be quiet when somebody else is speaking, and that goes as far for the audience as much as it does for us up here. But just wanted to kind of give us a short reminder of that. Come January, I think we've got a new year ahead of us, and hopefully we can put some stuff beside us and behind us and start off with the new year doing a little bit better. And I will recognize Councilman Mark Pouliot to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, we thank you for the opportunity to serve this community this day. We ask for your wisdom, your guidance, clarity of thought, focus, and the strength to do your will. May our actions be just and honorable in your sight, and help us to reflect your heart in service to our town. In the precious name of Jesus and for the sake of his reputation, we pray. Amen.
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 And the next item is reading of the minutes from December the 4th. Is there a motion for approval?
I make a motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, the end of the minutes, when we adjourn, it says, being no further business, Mr. Pouliot made the motion to adjourn. Ms. Condon seconded. I believe I seconded, didn't I? To adjourn.
I think he did.
And the motion was not approved unanimously. It was 3-2. Where's she at? She's not here tonight?
She's in Hawaii.
Oh. Okay.
No,
On
that's
TV.
that's the meeting before that you're talking about, where the gentleman came up, and while all the commotion was going on, we called for a motion. That wasn't this meeting. That was the one in the previous meeting. And I think
Previous meeting.
yeah.
It was last meeting. What are you talking about? The last meeting we had was December 4th, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the meeting I'm talking about.
I thought it was the 5th. This says the 4th. Okay.
And let me see.
What are you talking about? It was the
Let me get
4th.
to my minutes here. What was the meeting before December the 4th?
November 18th or something.
November the 18th. All right, let me find that.
Because we didn't have one. Yeah, we did.
It was December the 4th. It was my wife's birthday. That was the night of the tree lighting.
That's right.
Okay, this is the meeting I'm talking about. This is the minutes we're trying to approve right now.
But at the end of this meeting, I'll have to go back and look, but this wasn't when we had the little altercation.
It wasn't no altercation. It's just that it wasn't 3-2. It wasn't unanimous. It was 3-2.
Well, we can have Renee, when she gets back, check that. I'm not in 100% agreement, but I'm not 100% just not sure.
You're not in agreement about what?
Whether what you're saying is correct, I'm just not sure. We'd have to go back and let her check it and see.
I think he is. I think he did say.
He may have. I can't remember. But before I think we change it, we need to make sure that's correct.
Okay, well,
So we can either not approve the minutes, or we can approve the minutes other than the adjournment thing, and then let her double check that, whichever one y'all want to do.
well, don't approve the minutes. It's not right.
Well, like I say, it can be approved other than the adjournment, or we can just not approve them at all, whichever y'all want to do.
I want to get it right. I want us to approve the minutes correctly, and I
So
believe
you want to
in
make a
that.
motion to defer?
Well, you're the chair.
Well, I'm asking you.
I want the minutes to be right, correct.
So are you saying they're
What do
not
you
right?
want us to do? You're the chairman of the meeting, right?
So you can make a motion right now if you want to amend it, and if it gets a second and unanimous, then that's fine. Or defer, or just approve them as are without the adjournment.
Okay, so defer it.
How long will it take to pull that thing up on the, and watch it while we're doing our stuff?
Pull it up, tomorrow, it won't take long.
Well, I mean, as far as if you were sitting there looking on your iPad.
No iPad.
Oh, okay.
But he
All right.
wrote down the thing about the minutes. Bob did.
Yeah.
Because Renee's the only one that can change them, right?
No, I can change it.
No, we can
Okay.
change it.
But I mean,
We
you're
just
still
have to-
not gonna
Okay.
change
Approve
it
it.
right now. You're gonna have to defer it or bring it back next meeting and then fix it.
Yeah.
If there's a change to be
But
made.
there's a motion to defer, so is there a second?
That's second.
Any discussion? All in favor then of defer and do so with show of hands. Next is the administrative briefing. Mr. Brown, anything you need to add?
No, sir, I believe Mr. Klein has talked to all of you, and I just need to get council's okay to go ahead with the project on Harbin Court, right there adjacent to Harbison Boulevard. Arbor Days agreed to buy all the materials, and the water is going to be put in the name of the homeowners association, and our employees are going to go out there and help them dig the holes and plant them.
I think everybody's fine from what I've heard.
I'm in favor. Well, it saves us a fine, but it also saves Quail Valley a fine.
Any questions of Mr. Brown on the briefing?
Why do we got 6 different agendas on the iPad?
Things were changed from the time that Bob sent out the first agenda. I think there were 3 or 4 or 5 changes made as the stuff was added. I think
We got 3 proposed policies in there.
there
3
was
proposed policies. I
a
mean,
consideration of communication. I think the fire chief wanted to come by and speak. There was a approval for the policy for advertising was added. The appointments orchestra was added. The discussions for car break-ins was added. And I think there was something else added.
yeah, but I'm saying I got that
Team
on
logic,
all.
number C.
Also on your administrative briefing, you put on there that under item F, appointments to the orchestra, you put on there that it was advertised on listserv and town Facebook page, the opening.
It was put on the listserv for anybody wanting to serve on a committee to send in their applications, and we received like 3 applications from that.
And you put it on the Facebook page?
Will be in the future. There was nothing on this Facebook page.
All right, let me ask you a question. Did you advertise for the opening on the orchestra?
It was put on the listserv. Anybody who wanted to serve on a Town of Irmo committee to please fill out the form and send it in. And we gave them a link to the application.
I mean,
talent book
specifically
application.
for the orchestra. Specifically for the orchestra opening.
No.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, the meeting was November 12th, and adjournment, there being no further business, Mr. Pouliot made a motion to adjourn. Mr. Waite seconded it. The motion was approved 3-2 with Mr. Walker and Mr. Waite voting in opposition. That was the 12th.
That was the 12th.
12.
That was the special meeting we had.
December 12th.
We can have her look at
November
that December 4th and just go to the end of
You're
the
just burying the whole thing
Yeah, I see.
thing and see who
have to
made
go
it
back.
and verify it.
to the minutes, 2 pages, and go back to the 18th.
All right. The next item is amendments to the agenda. Any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none. Next is consideration of communications, and we have Chief Sonnefield here to talk about the new fire department and kind of give us an update on that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. How's everybody this evening? Did you, I think Bob said he gave you some sketches of what we're looking at. You got that? Okay. The other 100 or so pages have been approved, but I didn't think you'd probably want to see them at this juncture. We are only about a year and a half behind schedule on a completely different set of property than we started on, but we have made some progress removing the building that was on the property we purchased. And right now, we're looking at going to bid about mid-January, starting construction no later than June, and hopefully finishing up, I take that back, we'll start construction in March, finishing in June. It shouldn't be a long process. Permitting has been the issue. We're still waiting on a DOT permit, encroachment permits for the emergency light out front. They, for some reason, have been dragging their feet. We submitted it in May. We're still dealing with it. We just finished the permit for the driveway, the existing driveway that's there, that's been there for 37 years. We have to get permission to use it by DOT. Little things like that that all take a process. But the pictures you've got, basically, it's a smaller station than our headquarters, 2 bays, be staffed with 4 personnel and the fire marshal. And outside of that, what you see, it's very simple. If you look at it's hard to tell from there. It's not a color picture, but we're kind of going back to kind of an older school look. We trying to get back into the town square look of things. We've got kind of laying between the 2 parks. You have the police station, fire station. We did a little research back on our Child Street and learned that the president of the railroad was William Childs. So we're going to have a little bit of theme to that also when we build it. So thought we'd just bring something back. If there's any questions, like I said, March is when we should start digging. You'll get advance notice of that because we'll need you with shovels in hand. But it should be a short build once we do that.
Any questions?
I didn't see a pole. Where's the pole you slide down on? It's not in there?
No pole, 1 story.
1 story?
A lot quicker.
Oh.
Do you have Hootie and the Blowfish tickets?
I've got mine. That's just right. The evil ticket master can take care of the rest.
I had to ask.
Yes.
Well, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have a communication.
Oh, okay.
This morning I received an email from a gentleman I respect, Mr. Donlin, and I read it several times, and I understood why he wrote it and the gist of it, the spirit of it, everything. The only problem I have is we have to get permission from the attorney that's representing us in the case. I have his email from Bob Brown, and I'm going to send him your letter and get him to tell me whether to put it on the agenda or not.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're emailing the attorney who is representing us, I am, in this case, to get his permission, because at this point, we can't do anything without it.
If I can interject, I think we have to do something about it. The woman has fallen. She was in a wheelchair 2 years ago, and if we allow this to linger and go on through the next 2-3 months, how long is the court case going to take?
I don't know.
We're coming up on bad weather. I watch my neighbors go out in the morning and clear their car off. That woman isn't able to do that. She has a right to go to church. She has a right to go to a job. She has a right to have a living. The law is plain. The law, the ADA says a handicapped person has a right to make the changes that they need if they pay for it, and she's willing to pay for it. Now, we've procrastinated for 2 years, and you all know my feelings on it. The woman deserves her car put. Now, you have gone through your attorney. I have gone through the attorneys on the other side, and I've asked them for an injunction from the court to say, give Carol.
All right, you're going to watch your language, and this is consideration of communication. This is not an open debate. We've heard you. Kathy's
It's something
commented.
I feel very strongly about.
I understand that. I agree with that, and I believe that. But this is,
It's
you
gone
said
on
your
way
piece.
too long.
Well, we're going to let the attorneys in the court handle it, and that's where we're going to go, and
That's all.
that's our thing.
So he wants to add that to the minutes. You can't do
After
that?
we have to get permission from Mr., what's his name?
Well,
The attorney that's representing us in this.
this is consideration. This is not a debate
well, that's
for
what-
us. I know, but
But you have asked for that.
You have to ask for
Yes.
permission to have him
To
address the
Put
council?
it on the next agenda. We can't put it on this one.
No, for him to address the council when it's open.
well, he can address the council during this presentation of citizens at the end of the meeting
Right.
because it's open to anything, whether it's on the agenda or not. But
You're saying he can't do it at that time? Is that what you, he can't address the council at the
Oh, I
time?
don't-
At the end of the meeting, yes.
he can, at the end of the meeting, presentation by citizens, anyone can, and talk about anything, whether it's on the, but this is consideration of communication. This is where we share stuff, not debate stuff.
So we're not gonna, I mean, he wants us, I know we can't address the issue unless we put it on the agenda.
We couldn't put it on tonight,
Right.
but if our lawyer says, okay, then I'll put it on the next one. Glad.
Well,
What are you
our
putting
lawyer
on?
won't allow
I
us to
don't-
talk about it. He's already asked us not to talk about it.
Well,
So we can't.
What are you
Oh, I'm
putting on
looking
the
at it
agenda
in the
though?
letter.
I don't understand. He wants
All
to
right,
address
this is
the
getting out of
council.
order.
What are you putting
This-
on the agenda? What are you saying put on the
That,
agenda?
Barry, this is consideration of communication. We can
I
discuss
know,
it
but
at the
she's
end of the
saying,
meeting.
can I ask what were you talking about putting on the
No,
agenda?
this is not a debate period.
I'm asking her a question, Hardy. I'm not debating.
Yes, you are.
What
That
is it
is a
that you
debate.
want to put
That
on
is
the
a question.
agenda?
The next,
Just talk to him.
The next agenda, what do you want to
him
put
at the
on
meeting.
there? Are you saying put his letter on there?
Next, consideration of communication. I want to share with some other people some other things, and we have some other communications here to share. At our last meeting, a Mrs. Tizzo came and spoke to us, and during that conversation, she mentioned some items that she felt like we were not in compliance with. I sent her an email a couple days later, December the 6th, to ask her exactly what the items were that she was speaking to. Hey, Chief, we can't hear. Y'all gonna have to speak outside somewhere else. Yeah. That's fine. And then, so I emailed her to Esther to give us a little bit more information about what she was referring to. She did send me back an email with about 5 things on here. One was lack of a reasonable accommodation notice on public meetings. One was lack of ADA coordinator, accessible parking for people with disability. Ours did not comply with the 2010 or 12. Website not accessible, and no transition plan self-evaluation. Bob checked into that. The lack of accommodations, reasonable accommodations on a public notice. He found out what needed to be done. You'll notice it's on our meeting agenda tonight. It went out the thing, so we did address that. 2 of the items, number 2, lack of ADA coordinator and no transition plan requires you have 50 employees or more. We have 41, so those are not applicable. The parking up here, ours was done when this building was built. Things have changed, but from my understanding, Bob is going to have those 2 parking places. They got to have a space beside it for a wheelchair when you open up a van and get out. Is it next week or tomorrow?
Done.
They were already
Done.
there.
Okay, so it was done today. So those have been taken care of. The website has to be accessible, and he checked into all that stuff to see what that is. There are 3 cities in South Carolina right now that have website compliance with ADA. Mount Pleasant, Lexington, and Greer. And I think City of Greenville is looking into it. So he got some ideas, got some quotes, got all that stuff together. It's on our agenda tonight, and we can discuss whether we do it or not do it. Do it now or do it when. The ADA law, in short, says that when it comes to our attention, we have to look into it. And once we look into it, we have to come up with a plan on when we're going to address it and how we're going to address it. And they use that famous reasonable time frame. We don't know what reasonable time frame means. We don't know what reasonable looking into it means. But we got a price on doing it, and we can say do it now, we can say do it next year, whatever we think is reasonable. A lot of municipalities don't do it. Some may not have websites either. But it could be that the cost is not prohibited, or the cost is prohibited to them. That's why they can't reasonably do it. I don't know. But we will address that tonight. But I just wanted to let you know we did look into those things that she said, and I want the audience to know we did look into those things that Ms. Tissot brought up. And 2 of them we've already done, and one of them's on the agenda tonight. And the other 2 are not necessarily required. We could still do them, they're just not required. But anyway, I just wanted to
What do you mean it's not required? If it was ADA requirement, why is it not required?
Because you have to have 50 employees or more. Some of the things they require, for small towns, I guess you don't. We have 41, so we don't have to do that. We can still do the evaluation. We can still do an ADA coordinator. It's just not required. But that's something we can look at during the budget. And that evaluation thing, Bob will be looking at that and kind of, but I think what he said is when something is brought to our attention, then we have to address it within a reasonable period of time and make a reasonable effort, whatever that means, to address it, which I think he's kind of done that. And we'll get to that website thing tonight, and he can explain what all that is. But just wanted to address that since it was brought up at the last thing, that we did look into it, and we are looking at it, and some of the stuff we had to do because it had brought to our attention. I got an email the other day from a gentleman, Mr. Barnes. He is a 70-some-year-old college student going back to school, getting his MBA. And in order for him to get his MBA, he has to tackle a project, a problem, and come up with a solution. He asked me if there was anything we had. I couldn't think of anything that would meet his criteria, because it has to meet a certain criteria that we resolve it in a certain manner. Anyway, it was more than I could understand and more than I could explain, so I've asked him to come to the meeting. And if we can think of something later, tonight, tomorrow, the next day, we can let Bob know. If we can't think of anything, then he may have to find another organization to work with. But Mr. Barnes, if you want to come to the podium and kind of explain what it is.
Yes, sir. I'm at the age of 72. I decided I needed an MBA to go with my MED and my BBA. Now all I need is an MICKEYMOUSE, and I'll have all the letters. The project that you and I spoke about, I was just informed that you guys can't work with me on that because it involves an ongoing litigation regarding the woman and her ramp.
Right. Well, I think what I was talking about is that 484-page, whatever that thing is, PDF.
The Title II.
Title II. I didn't know if there was anything in there.
Actually,
I hate to ask,
I boiled
to read 484 pages and then whatever, but that was the only thing I was thinking of. Not
actually, I boiled that down to the 2 applicable sections of that 480 some odd pages. And it actually has to do with the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act. And actually, I wanted to help you solve the problem. And in investigating the problem, I believe I came up with a very reasonable win-win solution to the problem. There's a very reasonable, easy, inexpensive way to solve this without getting all the attorneys involved.
Well, and we're going to skip that part. We're going to go right to the problem that you're offering to the town to see if there's anything we can offer as a...
Basically, what I'm offering to the town has to do with you ladies and gentlemen, your civilian duties. I've spent the last 3 years developing a program to help people start, run, and grow a business. Everything from what to name your business to how to sell your business. If you know anything about SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, I'm the program director for the local chapter. But anyway, if any of you want to see me after the meeting, I will be more than happy to provide information on that.
But now you had mentioned the problem that you're going to solve has to meet a certain criteria as far as how you solve it. I can't remember what it was you mentioned.
Well, as I understand it, the problem is that the ramp as it is currently...
No, not that problem. The criteria for the project that you have to do had to meet certain criteria as far as...
I can take any problem of any organization as long as the organization has been in existence for at least 12 months, and all I need from you guys is permission to help you solve the problem and coordination to help develop a problem statement that accurately describes the problem. And once we get that done, then my next step is to solve the problem and make a video about how I solved the problem.
This is for
All
your
I need
school?
from you guys is a problem.
This is for your classroom assignment?
Yeah, this is for
MBA?
my capstone project for my MBA. And the only thing, I'm not a reporter, I'm not a lawyer, I don't even know any Russians. All I want out of this is my MBA. And if anybody wants to help me get that, I will be more than happy to help you solve a problem in your business.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's see. Next is presentation by citizens for things that are on the agenda tonight. And just a reminder, too, according to our ordinance, citizens are allowed to speak first, then business owners, then property owners, and then anyone else unless someone objects, and no more than 10 minutes. And we do ask for your name and address for the record so that the citizens watching this at home may have it, but also so we can verify that you're a citizen and all that good stuff. So, anyone? Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Michelle Carpenter. I live at 112 London Pride Road in Irmo, and I'm addressing number 12B. So the American Heritage Dictionary defines decorum as appropriateness of behavior or conduct, propriety, the convictions or requirements of polite behavior. We all understand the word is to basically mean behavior in keeping with good taste and propriety, or maybe we'll just call it good manners. We expect to see our town council and our mayor conduct themselves with proper decorum. However, what we expect and what we actually see and hear are often very different. So before you try and tell us what to do and how to conduct ourselves, we expect to see and hear you and all of the council conduct themselves with proper decorum and decency. For example, talking about your fellow councilman in a public place while drinking a beer and talking about how that councilman may have stole some money from the orchestra without any proof is not good decorum. That's slander, if not outright bad behavior for a town leader. Calling your voting constituents names other than their given name on a daily basis is not good decorum. We are constituents, not minions or rednecks or whatever any of you would like to call us. This is not leadership behavior. A consistent pattern of unwillingness to listen, to even consider that any residents of this town may have a valid point on any topics other than your own is also a lack of true leadership and decorum. Consistently calling out and singling out one council member as being out of order when all are guilty of the same interruptions is a lack of decorum. abusive language, and intimidating behaviors towards those you don't agree with on your website and in comments show a lack of decorum. Shutting down portions of a meeting where a citizen and or resident have a right to speak and be heard, a right to polite applause to show their agreement with what is said during a citizen's presentation is also a lack of leadership and decorum. It also borders on a violation of the First Amendment rights. We have seen this happen several occasions over the past year or more. Following Robert's rules, when it's in your favor to silence others or to obtain what is on your agenda, yet ignoring those same Robert's rules when it's in your favor to do so or to obtain what is on your agenda is also a gross lack of leadership and decorum. And finally, a leader leads by example. Based on the examples we have seen time and time again, what will you be able to tell any of us about proper decorum? Bless your hearts for listening to me. Merry Christmas. I hope Santa's good to you. And council and a few other people may understand this part. I did the right thing yesterday. What about y'all?
Thank you.
There are a couple of things I already noticed tonight when Kathy
I'm
brought
sorry, the name?
Brandy Clarkson.
And what is it, 318?
Let's not announce my address. We went over this like 4 months ago. Thank you.
318 Lord Howe? I'm going to pronounce it just so it's on the record. I'm sorry, but that's our ordinance. And that's the
So
thing.
is that going with decorum, Mayor? Because you agreed
No,
months
it's
ago
going
to
with
no
the-
longer do that, and you're
going with the
interrupting me. I'm
rules.
pretty sure that's not decorum either. We talked about that when the meeting
No,
started.
just a rule. But go ahead.
Oh, God, you make me sick. Okay. When you guys bring up things, it's okay for someone to respond from the audience as long as it's in your favor. That's what I've noticed. You brought up things and let the judge respond. You brought up things and let George Glassmeyer respond, but you refused to let Mr. Donnellan respond. That is not decorum. That is called favoritism by letting your friends break the rules, but not the other people. Secondly, there are some things on this agenda where you're going to pay thousands of dollars for the website to be ADA compliant. You're going to finish up this ordinance for ADA compliance, but you're still not ADA compliant because Miss Pat does not have a carport yet. That is what the whole issue is. That is why you are going to federal court. So it's okay to spend thousands. It's okay to change all the things you need to change. It's okay for her to be sitting in a chair with arms in it because now you have that on the bottom of your email. But it's not okay for you to do the right thing so that she's safe in her own home, which is the whole problem. You say you need to ask your attorney about that. You should have asked your attorney before you appointed stupid people to the ZBA who can't make decisions, and then y'all sat up here and spoke about her the way you did. You should have people on committees who are actually qualified to be on committees. But you will spend thousands and sit up there and talk about how you need to ask your lawyer if it's okay to give the woman the carport. It says it's okay in the ordinance. It's the third reading of the ordinance. But let her fall again. She's already got a ramp that's rotted because of your lack of following federal law. She's fallen again. What's going to happen when she breaks her hip again or she breaks her leg? You think you're going to owe her more than a carport? I think you will. Secondly, we're talking about decorum, and you, Mayor, called out Pat Donnellan for his language, but you've called us bitches on Facebook. And I've got the screenshot. That's his words, not mine. So again, it's okay for you, but it's not okay for Pat Donnellan to be upset because someone's safety is at risk. Eric, I would suggest very strongly before this town faces another lawsuit that you write a cease and desist and that they are no longer allowed to speak about any citizen. They are no longer allowed to intimidate any citizen or threaten to call a citizen's employer or anything else. They asked to be under a microscope. We did not. And I'm telling you now, I'm not the only person who's been threatened by y'all, and we are all sick of it. I'm tired of coming to meetings and having ZBA board members turn around and try to intimidate me, try to intimidate my daughter, try to intimidate everyone on this side of the room. I'm sick of it. It is unethical and it is illegal what y'all are doing. And it will not take much to have another attorney sue the pants off of the town of Irmo. So just stop it. You cannot sit here and talk about decorum and rules and interrupting when you don't even look at citizens when they're speaking. And you're on Facebook slandering everyone. You're in bars slandering everyone. You're meeting up with ZBA board members at Matthias slandering everyone. Yeah, it happens. I've got pictures of that too. We've all got all the evidence. Stop it. Make Irmo a place to be proud to live again, or resign. If you can't do a good job for the citizens, resign. If you can't speak kindly to us, resign. We all came here kindly 2 years ago. Miss Pat came here. She was sweet as she could be. She's a good person. And y'all have let her get hurt time and time and time again, and you're still willing to continue to let her suffer. But you've admitted guilt. As soon as you sent a town council meeting agenda out with ADA stuff on the bottom, you admitted guilt. You are guilty. She is innocent. She deserves to be safe.
Hi, Eric Sickinger, 417 Crestville Road. So I want to talk about the website and the advertising openings for the boards and commissions. So I do appreciate that the town moves so quickly to make some adjustments to procedures, policies, parking spaces. That's excellent. In the future, I hope it doesn't take a lawsuit for us to do the right thing as a town. First question, and I know you might not be able to answer due to Robert's rules, but did the town get competing bids for the website, a one-time fee to fix the site and to do monthly work on that? And second, regarding the advertising for openings on boards and commissions. So advertising is one thing, right? Putting it in a newspaper or buying Google ads or Facebook ads. But it is free for us to, as a town, to post to our own town website. And it's free for us to send out emails. So there certainly can be no harm done to let the town know that there are vacancies. The worst thing that can happen is nothing, right? The best thing that can happen is that you get more applications so that more people go into the talent pool for next time. Last, I want some clarification regarding what the policy is for nominations to boards and committees for that appointments for volunteers. Because I've gotten conflicting reports if I look at the history of the town and just the last couple of nominations. So my understanding is that the policy now is that the oldest application in the talent pool for that vacancy is the one that's going to be nominated first. I don't know if that's really like the policy or if it's just kind of on a case-by-case basis, but I don't know if that in particular makes sense, because if someone's like the undersecretary for housing and urban development and we have a vacancy on the zoning board and they move into town 6 months before and they happen to apply at the last minute, well, they should probably get nominated and considered, not just because they were the newest applicant, not the oldest or the first in line. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Larry Slaughter, and I'll speak just as a citizen, 349 Wycombe Road, and I'll speak to number 10F. Mayor and council members, it's been my privilege to serve on the commission, the Orchestra Commission, for the last few years, and we have a time that two of the terms have come to expire. One of them's mine, and the other is of John Lindauer, who's vice chairman of the Orchestra Commission. We both have asked to be reappointed. It's been our pleasure to serve. John's worked incredibly hard for the orchestra over the years he's been on the commission. We're pleased to serve, and I ask respectfully that you would reappoint John and I back to the commission again. Thank you.
Anyone else? Next item is unfinished. Item A, and just a reminder too, when we make a motion, whoever makes it will go first, whoever second, and then please remember one speaker at a time. This is item 18, ordinance 1834. Is there a motion for and a second?
Second.
And Councilman Walker.
Did we incorporate those things from Ms. Tissot in this?
Yes, sir, we did.
I'm just pulling it up. Yeah, the again, this is the this is incorporating what she had sent us, plus what DOJ said we needed to have, right?
Can you make it bigger, please? Can you make the screen bigger? The text? It's on PowerPoint.
So any more?
No, that's.
So who seconded it? Kathy? You have any?
I believe this is in our best interest, the town and the citizens' best interest, to make this officially an ordinance.
Any other comments? One thing I do want to add, and just a reminder, and Eric might need to expound on that, but ADA compliance and their rules and regulations and all like that are just like all the other rules and regulations of the federal government. When we have something in our ordinance that says we will abide by all federal laws, that includes the Constitution and other state laws and other federal laws that we don't have in our ordinance. The reason they asked for something to be done was to just make sure we were more keenly, I'll say, aware that something's in there. But even if we don't pass this, we still have to follow ADA. And ADA guidelines are a whole lot thicker than what we have here. Eric took this and tried to condense it to something that was a little bit more easier for us to follow and everything. And then we took some information that came from what he did and what DOJ did to kind of combine those together. But even if we miss something in here, even if it doesn't cover everything, sound like my thing is going out when I turn my head, we're still obliged to follow the whole law, even if it's not in this section here, even if we miss something. And as it brought to our attention before, when stuff is brought to our attention, we will take a look at it. I think we did. I have a few issues with some of this stuff in here, and Eric and I have talked about them before with the documented and qualified, that kind of stuff. I saw something, I can't remember if it was West Columbia's website or Lexington's ADA website compliance rules, and they have the term qualified. So I don't know how, but anyway.
What are you talking about, qualified? Where's that?
Well, when we talked about in here where it says, like in a...
He's talking about the part where we
the
said...
very first
where the
paragraph up there where it says applicability, It says providing individuals with disabilities. Some of them say documented, some words that were giving to us by some others said use documented disabilities. Others said something else, I can't remember. And then I think that one said qualified.
Right, I like qualified and demonstrated because you can demonstrate something without documents, and somebody can qualify without having documentation.
But I remember seeing it on that one in Lexington, and I don't know why they would have it. I guess it doesn't matter one way or the other, but that was the only thing in the whole thing. I just felt like it needs to be a little bit more clarified, because to me it puts too much on the town administrator to do something when.
Well, let me ask you this then, okay, if you're gonna, on the agenda, you put on the bottom of the agenda, in accordance with the requirements of Title II of the American Disabilities Act, the town will not discriminate against qualified individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, I think
that means you're making a decision that they're qualified or not to be disabled? Somebody who's making that decision that they're disabled, that they qualify as being disabled? Eric, on the bottom of our agenda, they added that ADA statement.
Yeah.
So somebody's making that decision that they're disabled or not.
I assume that whoever they would reach at 7817050 is going to make a determination as to its services, programs, or activities, and the changes or modifications or help that might, somebody's got to make that decision.
Yeah, so you're putting that onus on who to make that decision that they're qualified?
I guess whoever they're contacting at Town Hall at 7817050.
Okay, and when that phone rings, who picks it up?
I'm not there, so I don't really know how to answer that. Assume Bob, somebody's answering it.
But I'm saying somebody has to make that decision in Town Hall that they're qualified as it says right here, qualified.
And to me, and that's just to me, but what that means is when somebody, I won't say calls in, they're making the determination that they're qualified. So that when they call in, they know that they may be asked, what's your handicap? Because I think, and Bob can correct me, is that if they call in and say,
you're disabled.
Well,
say I'm disabled, and you're going to qualify that, right?
But let's say they can't read or they can't hear, and they need that voice activation or whatever that recognition is, or the other stuff. Then they have to ask them, what is your, so if they say, well, I can't see and I need the Braille thing. And we'll get into that more when we get down there, what all that means. But
well, no, we're about ready to vote on this ordinance, and I want to make sure that I understand who's making this decision that they're qualified. Is it Bob? Is it Renee? Is it secretary answering the phone? Somebody call up and say, I need accommodations, and they have to be qualified. That's what it says in here.
That's right. It's going to be me who's making the decision. Unless I can't make decisions, and I'll call the lawyer. This blurb did not come from Eric. It came from Mrs. Tissot. She's the one that gave it to me verbatim, and then she said she was going to train with me to help me understand what decisions can be made. So we're not there yet. We just got this a week ago. So it's going to take some training to go with this.
Okay. Well, I'm concerned about us passing this third reading then, if we're not sure who's making the qualified decision that somebody calls up and they are, in fact, disabled or not.
Right now, the town administrator or the zoning administrator is going to make that decision unless he needs help, and he'll call Eric.
Right, now, if you got questions about this ordinance that you're voting on, that's crystal clear. That's going to be Bob. He is the person who's making that decision.
Okay.
And then if they don't like the decision of Bob, then there's the ZBA. And if we don't like the decision of the ZBA, then there's an appeal through Code Section 6-29-820 to the Circuit Court for the state of South Carolina. And I suppose if you wanted to take that to its furthest end potential, there would be, another appeal to the Court of Appeals and another appeal to the Supreme Court, potentially.
Okay, so if somebody says that I am disabled and I need accommodation, they have to go through that process of going to the court or not?
No, they ask Bob.
Right. So you don't have to go through the court
That's correct.
appeal process. Okay.
It's only it's only if they disagree with the decision of Bob and then later disagree with the decision of the ZBA. Then the court system gets involved.
So they only have to go to ZBA then.
That's right.
If they like Bob's answer, they don't. If they don't like Bob's answer, then they got to go to ZBA, and they don't like that answer, they got to go to circuit court and appeal it, which is all in that part of the ZBA guidelines. But right now, right, it says in here, the zoning administrator makes that, which is Mr. Brown. So, any more discussion? All in favor then of third and final reading of 1834, do so with show of hands. All opposed? Next is the approval of a resolution 1807, and we've had some discussion on this thing, and it is back to us, and we can make a motion and get a second, and if it does, then we can make a motion to go in executive session and discuss some stuff. If we have any more questions or concerns, and then we can come out and vote. I will go over one other little change that Bob came up with that may answer stuff if we don't need to. But is there approval for resolution 1807?
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second it.
And let me make a statement, and then if we need to go in executive session, we can.
I thought you said that
well, I just want to say this, it may keep us from having to go into an executive session. There's one line in here, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, line item 1, third sentence, where it says warrants and orders. That is the condition that we've had some concern about. Bob said we can just approve the resolution as is and take that out, scratch it out, if we want to do that. Or we can go in executive session and talk more. But I'll just let y'all know that. So do we want to go in executive session? And okay.
I think we should. Make a motion to go in executive session.
All right. And second.
Second.
Why are we going in executive session again?
It's a personal matter.
No, you just can't say personal matter. What is it? Specifically, what is it?
It's a personal matter.
No, you just can't say personnel matter.
Yeah, we can.
It has to be specific. No, you cannot. What
gonna
specifically are we going into?
There's a motion and been seconded.
Let me address that and make sure. This is we have an appointment here to appoint a substitute municipal judge. It is also our municipal clerk of court. We are going to be discussing that. We're going to be discussing some legal matters with that, so we can go into an executive session to get some legal advice, and also, since this has to do with a personnel matter. Is that?
Yes.
All right. All in favor, do so with show of hands. All opposed? All right, we'll go in executive session, and we'll come back out and go over this. And we need to turn our mics off.
Unless you have everybody agree to take it in. You can't take any papers in the back unless you do. You can't take any papers back. No, you can't. Okay. Hey, if you take that in the back, you're violating the rule.
Now, it didn't receive a majority vote because an earlier nomination got a majority vote. There's only one slot. She did second.
That was hard to follow all that stuff.
There was something else in there I wanted to talk to you about.
So like when you use ADP payroll, they take liability. Depositing the payroll.
I don't know that there was a mistake. But it was something that
While we're paying them, whether I also check out, I know
I'm old. My memory's not so good anymore. I'll think of it next week. Thanks.
Right, and what I did before, when my neighbor built me the ramp 4 years ago, we put down LEDs and I got that turf, that grass, and we pasted it, and it worked just fine, until we had so much rain, it rotted. So now I need to replace, but I need a wood one to hold the weight of the stick, to go down the ramp.
Their name is
Oh, yeah, I do, that's how I walk my dog. Yeah, I do that to walk my dog.
Sometimes if I don't have a clear,
Because I can't walk him, I fall.
I look at my notes and the name is not real clear. I don't want to put the name in if I'm
No,
not
I'm
sure.
not in the woods.
Yeah.
That's a proper name in the town.
I do use it.
She said her first time was at work.
I don't get that.
I do need the ramp though when I shop. I can't carry, I can't carry groceries like I used to. I have a car.
You expose yourself.
Oh, you're talking about this way.
All my groceries that come up the ramp. I can't be out walking, carrying a bag here, a bag there. So I'm taking that bag and then moving it over the big dog.
She said that
Well, then don't get up in public. Okay?
you got a point.
If you don't want to be identified, don't get, I like your shirt, by the way. Don't get.
Well, yes, so we have this on the ramp, but I just
Can't
took
have
it
it both
off so I
ways.
could dry out.
I'll record it.
Well, it's not indoor, indoor, outdoor. That would also fit under that.
Yes, but now it's not going to help again because this is gonna get wet when it rains unless there's something to cover it. That's what's happened right now.
Yeah.
To
Well, now, the only problem you're going to have, one of the things or plus I say at risk, $7 worth of that is technically insurance policy. Well, ignorant, yeah, but ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Are you kidding me? My house is one of the nicest ones in the area, isn't it? Come on, isn't it?
If it's not
And it's a
truthful, we're
professional account. It's not just some A-frame that you find out of.
Right, the problem is, as a town, we should not have the ability to take a bid now. You can't get through there.
Don't even, I don't even want to talk about them. They're not even human beings.
I think there's probably ways.
Don't even go there. Don't try to do that. Don't try to do that.
I was telling my wife earlier,
Don't try to do that. You know what? Things will all come to pass. And so we waited 2 years. We just have to
Get a councilman to put that on the agenda. Staggered term. For example, put that on the agenda for term. I don't know. Council consider it. Just seems like not going to get anything until it's on the agenda. Get them on the agenda. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. You don't want to serve and supervise the same thing with which organization. Well, this is, I think that's a whole different concept in terms of, we don't supervise the you understand that for ZBA to approve zoning, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5, yes. Down the street a bit. So that happens. That's the third majority. That works for that passed. Yeah, we just need 2/3. I think that makes sense. I'm in a good day, sir. How you doing? I think we did it. What's the bulldozer getting you? For the piano guy. Although we have to build across it. See that truck going down? I'll tell you what, I want that clear. I just want to, what about if I can arrange for you to run track? You can't make yourself something. We facilitate it. Get to the front. Well, I wasn't necessarily referring to that. The engineer and everybody else at the meeting, they said, and then send you a letter saying, okay, make these final. So they say, we agree, make the changes. Once again, he has sympathy because I have to put up I apply law allow us to do what That's the deal. If I don't play both sides,
I know that routine. Versus I'm going to solve.
he got caught. I'm not going to order for 20 years, so I know how to read the square footage of the building. Just large enough. The law doesn't allow it. You see that in courts all the time.
Business card I gave you, bizblaster.com, right there. That is a program that I spent over 2 years developing. That basically covers everything. What the name of the business is. So, and I've also got this on my
All right, so we got that, we got that. I am going to call the meeting back to order, and I am going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to strike the word warrants, which is the third sentence on the fourth paragraph, and I think Bob knows which one it is. Take that out so that they will not be able to, she will not be able to sign the search warrants and arrest warrants, but everything else. So is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
Any discussion on that amendment, taking that word warrants out? All in favor then of that amendment to remove the word warrants, do so with show of hand. All opposed?
Just to, well, we made the motion now, go ahead.
And so now we're back to the 1807 that has been amended. Any discussion on that? Seeing none.
Somebody, who seconded?
The amendment or the
motion?
The motion, Mark seconded it. Kathy made a motion, Mark seconded it.
I think Julius actually did.
And then we made an amendment, and that was approved.
And Julius second.
Okay, so they don't want to say anything. I have a.
Okay. Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
So we're going to appoint Kim as a substitute judge with the powers and all that stuff that you're saying, but not being able to sign warrants. And that's what we're about to do. And when we do that, is she not an employee of the town anymore, or is she an employee with a certain term, or?
Same as we discussed in there, and the same as on this thing. It's a 4-year term. She is an employee of the town. She also is a judge to a certain regard. She's not a judge that can do trial judge, I think is what you said, Eric, or something else. What was
But she works under the auspices of, not under the direction of the town administrator anymore. She works under the direction of who?
Well, in a way, she's like Becky. She works under the court administration, but at the same time, she has an office in here, and she gets a paycheck from Bob Brown. So, these things that are on here, we've agreed to let her do those. Other than that, but yes, she does answer to the court administration, if I'm correct in that regard, just like any other judge would. She is not a trial judge, so she can't do all the duties that a judge can, but she can sign this paperwork that we've authorized her to do, that the state is going to certify if she, when she and if she goes through the training and passes and gets their certification. So she won't be able to do anything until she goes to that.
But you're giving her the title of a municipal judge, a substitute municipal judge.
You know,
Same as basically what Becky was before.
no, Becky was a judge that could hold trials.
I'm saying when we had Mickey and she was a substitute judge.
Yeah,
that's what Becky was.
Different.
She was actually your associate judge, was what you called
Associate judge, yeah.
Associate, okay. So
the term of 4 years is my concern. I mean, why don't we have it in line with the elections every 2 years?
Because this is what the state, what do you call them, the administrative court, is their resolution and how they want it worded and how they do it everywhere else.
We have our judges every 2 years. The term is every 2 years.
Yeah.
If we appoint her,
if
we appoint her associate or substitute judge today, then it would be 4 years from now when she can basically get reappointed. We wouldn't be able to fire her. We wouldn't be able to reprimand her or anything. She has a separate, totally separate, autonomous position.
4 years from the date she is certified.
It doesn't say that. It says term of 4 years. It doesn't say that.
But she's not a judge until she goes to the certification.
Yeah, there's too many things here.
Well, everybody's entitled to vote yea or nay when it gets to that point. You know. Any more discussion? All in favor then of the approval for resolution 1807, do so with show of hands. And let's see, let me just, there.
Bless you. Thank you.
Next is approval of a letter of credit in the amount of $100,610.76 for Shoals Lending. And is there a motion for approval?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
And
well, this started when they started the subdivision because we've been burnt before by bonds expiring and previous town administrator not catching it. And when Richland County had not inspected the roads and approved them, and the current council, what was it, 2 subdivisions we had to bite the bullet and pay for. So when this one came up, we decided we had to have a cash or letter of credit. And the first phase of this subdivision, they put up cash. And once Richland County certified the roads, they got the bond back because they're taking control of the roads. They will maintain their own roads. It's a gated community. So once the roads are approved, they get their money back, and we're out of the picture on that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
any other discussion?
You said it was a gated community?
It is going to be a gated community.
I didn't see any gates up there. They took the
Well, they're
gates
still
down.
constructing, Mr. Walker.
No, they took the gates down. They had gates up there, but I saw they took it down.
Well, I imagine since the trucks are going in and out, it would be a little difficult to have each construction crew with a clicker to open and close the gate.
And a lot of gated communities, gates don't work, and a lot of gated communities leave the gates open all the time. It's not, they can leave them open or shut if they want to. Basically, that just means that the county has no, since it's not a county-maintained road, then the public really has no right to that road. So they can gate it if they want to, and you shut it. They can leave it open as well, too, if they want to, but.
You have the documentation that says this is a gated community road. That you have the documentation that say that? Okay.
Yes, sir, we have.
They came before us and spoke and showed us the plan and everything.
No, I understand that, but I saw there was a gate up there at one time, but now I don't see one up there. So I'm like, why did they take it down? they changing their plans? I don't know.
I think I won't say the only reason, but there had to be some kind of definition of a sewer pipe or something like that, wouldn't it? And one county lets you use one pipe, one county doesn't, and they were going to use a certain pipe because it's better, cheaper, quicker, I don't know. And one county wouldn't approve it, and it goes into both counties, so they just said, hey, we're going to do a gated community. We're going to take care of our own stuff. We'll do it our way, and that's what they said. And they will be charging a humongous fee to live in that place to help pay for the roads from years to come. The county won't be paying for it. The taxes won't be paying for it. They're responsible for all that stuff in that community. Road, sewer, water, the whole shebang. But I guess it's better for them to do it that way. I don't know. All we're doing is approving their letter of credit, and then whenever they get through doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, then they get the money back at that time. Before October 31st, 2021. Is there any more discussion? All in favor then of approval of that letter of credit and that dollar amount, do so with show of hands. Next is the approval with the contract with Team Logic, who is our IT people, for a one-time fee of $3,700 and a monthly maintenance contract of $700. I'm going to make a motion for this. If it gets a second, then Bob can kind of explain it more, and then we can decide if we want to do it now, put it off, what we want to do, or how we want to do it.
I'll second it.
Okay. And like I say, when you get to IT, computers, you're way past me. I do know Bob checked around. There's been some comments about the $700 to maintain it, but anytime we update our website, no matter what we do, we put another agenda on there, another whatever on there, anything that we put on there, they have to go in there, I won't say right away, but pretty much right away, and do whatever they do to make that page compliant with whatever software they got that works with whatever software other people have. And for them to, I'm going to say, drop what they're doing at the time to do this, there is some cost. I asked Bob to check with Mount Pleasant and Lexington and Greer just to see if that was kind of in line with their maintenance thing. And I don't know what he found out, but at the same time, some of them places may have their own IT people and do their own stuff, so they don't have a contract. They do it themselves. But can you explain a little bit more about what this ADA website is?
I don't know any more than you do, sir.
Probably do.
It's a big, thick document that's provided. It involves writing code to allow people with disabilities, mostly hearing and sight disabilities, that's using Braille keyboards to be able to access all the information on the website.
And voice, I think you said voice recognition.
And there's a voice recognition program that has to be integrated in there somehow. And I'm not an IT person, so I'm not going to confess to know all this. And we did check with Greer. Greer has their own IT person, so does the town of Lexington, and I didn't hear anything back from Mount Pleasant. So, I would assume that the $700 is, we don't know if we can get that price down. I talked to the president of the Team Logic people today. He said he'd maybe negotiate with us and start off around $500 and see how it goes, because if they're doing a lot of corrections and we're putting a lot of stuff on the website, every time we add something, whether it just be a new staff member for the police department or an agenda or ordinances or what's happening blurb on there, they have to rewrite code to make sure that that's compliant with everything else that they've made compliant on the website. So if they make it compliant today and we add something tomorrow, they've got to go in and write more code tomorrow to keep it compliant. And that's where the cost is. So I'm trying to work out a deal with him where we get charged by the hour just to see how it works out for a month or two. I mean, it may be a couple $100. I mean, we don't want to get into the $700 a month. That seems real high to me, too. But I have checked around, and $3,700 is kind of low for actually doing it. But as I was explaining to Mr. Sickinger earlier, they have the proprietary rights to the website. They're the ones that built it.
No. That's our website.
Not for the, no. We can get on that website and we can make changes because they've given us rights to do it. And we get on the website right now and make changes. We don't own that website. We have the ability to do whatever we want to it, We don't own the code.
The domain is ours.
We have the domain name, that's correct.
Okay.
We could take it down and turn it off if we
The
want.
code behind it is ours, right? You're
No.
saying it's not?
No.
Who negotiated that?
Wasn't no negotiation. We don't have anybody on staff that writes code. Whether it's C++, I don't even know what
I
the code
understand
was that they
but-
used on that. But again, there's a code. It's not everything on it. People think that everything on websites is HTML, and it's not. I mean, there's a lot of underlying parts that have to actually get a code written in there on how you access stuff, go from one window to the next, and do search engines, things like that. That's all done with code, not with HTML. That's mostly pictures, diagrams, pages that you add on there.
I understand that, but when I had my website at my restaurant, I was able to go through there and make modifications to the calendar every month myself.
Same here. We can do the same thing. But again, we don't have the background code to be able to make the changes that are required. If you'd like, I will be happy to show you some of the code. If you just want to look at it and see how it's written. Because it's all Greek to me.
Yeah, okay.
But that's what the problem is, what they have to do behind the scenes to make it ADA compliant. It has to do with the Braille. It has to do with stuff that we're adding on there. Yes, we can go on there and type anything we want on our website right now. We can add all the pictures we want in the video. But we can't make it ADA compliant. We don't have that ability because you can't just press a button and it's ADA compliant. You have to go in there and write a code for every line of items that are in there.
Okay, what do you mean making it ADA compliant? Give me an example.
Well, the main example that was explained to me was the Braille. If somebody has a Braille keyboard at home, unless your website is set up to read or understand Braille, that person can't understand what's on our website because it's not compliant. It doesn't understand Braille without writing all the code so that they can type in something and then the computer will talk to them. And then back to the code.
Now, the options are, we can approve it and do it now. We can wait and do it later. We can put it into our budget next year, say, hey, we're going to do it next year, but put it in our budget because it's not in our budget now. It is, what is your dollar amount? Is it 5,000? Your approval?
What about the approval?
Your approval amount, what is your approval amount?
5,000.
What is your authorization?
Yeah.
Oh, $5,000.
So it's something Bob could approve, but it's not something he wants to approve without our thing. As far as the, we can put it in our budget for next year. And this is the reasonable. Since it's brought to our attention, we have to respond in a reasonable amount of time with a plan of what we're going to do and implement in a reasonable amount of time. We could say tonight, we're going to do this. We're going to wait till next year. We're going to wait till the end of next budget year and pay for the $3,700 and whatever the beginning of 2020, and not pay for the maintenance until the beginning of the 21 budget. And that's probably reasonable. Or we can just say, do it, or do it later, or do it sometime next year. I think Bob said it takes them about 4 months to do it all.
He said it would have to take between 3 and 4 months because they have to do an assessment of the whole website first to decide what they've got to do to start the compliance process.
So
And like I said, it's writing code. They're not going to do it in a
Right.
short amount of time.
So Braille is one example. What was the other one? Hearing impaired?
Voice
Is that another one?
recognition, where you
Correct.
speak.
Sight.
Some kind of voice recognition thing, something to do that if they can press buttons, and most people could do it on their computer anyway, but make all the letters and everything bigger. All the font gets real big if they want it to be big all the time. Same with pictures. I can't go into any more detail than that. Again, I've got all this stuff, and like Hardy had said earlier, it's like 480 pages for Title II in the ADA DOJ requirements for municipal governments and catering to the disability.
I don't think we should take this approach, slam this through right now.
Oh, there's no rush. Again, like the mayor said, if we want to, we've identified it. Somebody told us we had a problem, we're not compliant. Well, we know about it, so we can't ignore it.
I didn't say ignore it. I'm just saying that we're taking we're taking this drastic sledgehammer approach to fix this.
I don't know
I'm
if
not
it's
sure
a
we
drastic
understand what the problem.
sledgehammer. We're just saying, here's what it costs, either do it or don't do it, or do it later. I mean, that's our option. Do it now, do it later.
Okay.
And, you know, it's not in our budget, so technically, legally, we could say, okay, put it in next year's budget. It's not a big dollar amount as far as that, so we could say do it and do a budget amendment. One suggestion, I mean, and to answer some of the questions I think that were brought up is, you know, did we bid it out? No. It's like Bob said, the computer company has to do it, and they own the thing, so they're the only ones that can do it, unless we want to hire somebody in-house, which is $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year, which is more than the $700 a month or $500 a month.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we could technically bid it out, but again, the cost will not be there. I mean, because whoever we give it to, let's say somebody else is low bidder, they've still got to get the proprietary rights from Team IT to be able to go in and enter code into their proprietary.
And they're going to pay for that.
Correct.
Sure.
So that would raise our cost because they'll pass the cost on to us.
Of course.
How long is this $3,700 fee good as far as we wait to the next budget year? Is it still going to be $3,700?
Don't know, I assume so. I mean, they're our IT company. I mean, we can probably get that price down too if we negotiate with them. That's just their price based on what they know they have to do because they've set up 4 websites already to be ADA compliant, so they know how to do it.
Yeah, evidently, there's more businesses and people that do it than municipalities. And again, some of them may be small, some of them may not even have a website, but I think somebody he mentioned, it might have been you, that you thought West Columbia was, and I went to theirs and looked, and they have disclaimers and all on there, but they're not, that's all they got.
She
They don't have
mentioned
the other stuff.
Ms. Tissot,
Oh,
she
okay.
mentioned West Columbia.
But they do have some, that little thing that's on there, they got that disclaimer and some other stuff, and I think they have an ADA coordinator over there, and it says, contact us and we'll help you, but I don't think their website is, well, from what the Municipal Association said after doing some research, just Greer and Lexington and Mount Pleasant. And Greenville is in the process of looking, but they haven't done it. They're kind of like us.
Sounds like we need an ADA coordinator before we take the approach of just fixing this. I mean,
Well, it's a council decision. Like I say, it's a yay or nay or later. That's basically what it is. You know, and to me, it's, you know, up to council. My suggestion would be to either put it into next year's budget, and that gives Bob time to do whatever, or start in January of next year or February and authorize them to do the upfront work and then put the $700 or whatever comes up into the budget. That's an alternative too, but
That's a good one.
as far as spending the $3,700 in
The-
this budget,
Yeah.
if it takes 4 months, they would have to start in, say, February or March. February.
Yeah, and then we'd be in the new budget year.
Right.
By the time they got it
Yeah.
through.
Right.
So y'all want to do that?
Yes, I
Bob
think
does.
that's
Sounds like
a
a
good
win.
Let them
idea.
start in February, and that'll give them 4 months, and then we'll have the maintenance into our next year's budget and work on that 700.
That's fine, and if you want, I'll get these people down here and let them give you a demonstration and explain exactly what they do to
When do we
Good
meet?
make it compliant.
January the 14th or something? They can come to our next meeting?
End of January.
All right, let's let them do that. Do we want to defer this until then, or approve it, or with that recommendation, or what?
I think it makes sense to defer it until then.
I do too.
That way we're all educated as to what they're going to be able to do.
So, who wants to make a motion to defer?
I make a motion to defer.
And I'll second.
All right, motion to defer and second it. Any discussion on that? And I guess Bob will try to get him in here until January, whatever meeting, and then we can put it back on the agenda at that time. And
I'll let council know. It'll be January or February. I'll coordinate with them and let you know what the best time to get them in here.
All right.
well, can we defer this until the meeting that they come?
This is not an ordinance, so I'm not even sure you have to defer it. You could just vote it down, or we can bring it back up later when we can get them in here.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's just do that. Let's vote it down, and then you can put it back on that agenda when they can come.
I will.
All in favor then to approve the contract with Team Logic in the amount of $3,700 and $700 a month, do so a show of hands. That fails. Actually, for the record.
I had to rescind.
Well, let's just vote on that motion and defer or vote down that motion to amend it. And then, yeah. So we had a motion
to defer.
Well, we had a first motion before that, which was to change it to the $3,700 starting in whatever. So let's vote that down. All in favor of that motion, do so a show of hands. All right, so that dies 0-5. And then make a motion to defer again.
I make a motion to rescind that deferral.
I second.
Well, we can't
To
really
rescind the deferral.
we do that because it's already out on the table. It's like taking work.
All right, so let's vote on it then.
So it's Mark and Kathy. And then all in favor of deferring? No.
Yeah.
Not deferring.
Yes.
No. Oh, because we're just voting it down.
Well, no, I voted to defer.
I'm getting confused now.
I made a motion to defer.
So we need to vote on that.
So we have to vote on that.
Yeah, vote on that and vote it down. So a motion to defer until whenever, January the something, all in favor.
Okay.
So that's 0-5. Now we're back to the
That wasn't-
original approval.
We don't want to defer it. We didn't want to defer.
No, we just want to kill it and then they'll put it back on.
Right.
Yeah. So all in favor of the original approval to contract with Team Logic for $37,000 and $700, do so a show of hands. All right, that's 0-5. Now that one's dead. And then Bob can just put it back on when they can come.
Okay.
Now, 1901, this is the safety policy that we have to do every so often. Is there a motion for this resolution 1901? Do so a show of hands. Or, excuse me.
So
Make a motion.
Yeah, second.
I'm getting ahead. All right, any discussion on that?
No.
And this is just record keeping, so to speak. We have to update this every so often and re-vote on it. All in favor then of that approval of that resolution, do so a show of hands. And next is the approval for the policy for advertising the openings to the boards and commissions. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
I need to ask a question.
So
Let me-
move.
oh,
Well,
Second
no,
it.
no, I want to know if we're going to discuss this.
this
We have
is the,
second it to get it discussed.
Yeah. Shouldn't we discuss it before we do it?
Well, yeah,
well,
the
we
second
gotta
it,
have
we
a
can
motion
discuss
and a
it.
second to discuss it, and you can vote for it or vote
Okay,
down.
a second.
All right, Councilman Walker.
Basically, the policy that I put forth is, what you got up on the board here is all boards and vacancies will be advertised for no less than 2 weeks, 14 days, before an appointment can be made. The advertisement at a minimum can be made on the town Facebook page and or the website or email or whatever free advertisement we use. In conjunction with receiving resumes, applications can be filled out via the talent pool form or receives a resume. And all talent pool forms will be kept on file for 12 months, after which they have to be updated and resubmitted. Now, back in December 2015, when we came up with this talent pool, Mr. Pouliot made it emphatic that this was supposed to be in conjunction. The talent pool was supposed to be in conjunction with people just putting in applications or expressing an interest to be on these boards and commissions. We never said we'd never advertise. We said it would be in conjunction with the normal process. But since we don't have a formal proposed process, this is what I'm proposing, and this is our formal process. And that's why I put it forward. Straightforward, cut and dry. There's no more, a vacancy occurs, nobody doesn't know about it, nobody has an opportunity to apply for it. This eliminates all of that.
Yes, yes. Isn't this what we do?
No,
The 2 weeks is what's different?
2 weeks, right?
Okay.
And advertising on the town Facebook page.
Okay, got it.
I wanted to make a couple comments, and I've made another one, and I'm going to present it as well. But I also watched that video when we voted on this, and yes, there was some discussion about advertising it in the Irmo News or wherever. But I also said during that meeting that the reason we were doing the talent thing was to get away from advertising because nobody was responding to the advertising in the neighbor section of the state newspaper or in the Irmo News, either one. And so we were doing this to eliminate that process. And it never came back that, yes, we needed to do both. It was brought up, but it was also countered. So it wasn't 100% clarified that we would do both. It was pretty much left that we would do the talent pool. And it was also...
Mr. Pouliot said he would do both.
He said do both, and then I said, yeah, but the reason we're doing this is so we don't have to do both, and we don't need to do the other one and spend the money. And
what money is to put it on Facebook? There's no money involved.
No, but on the Irmo News and the other places like that was. And those were the ones that we were doing at the time. That's the only thing we were doing at the time.
But this says Facebook or website. That doesn't cost any money.
No.
Either one of those doesn't cost a dime.
But it would cause a problem right now if we did the 2 weeks.
Why?
Because in this same instance, the other day when I was talking to Bob about putting the discussion for procedures for appointing volunteers on here, because I wanted us to go over those methods. And then he came back later and said, oh, we got to do appointments to the orchestra because they will meet again before we meet again. So if we had to wait 2 weeks, we could not appoint them, and then they would have a meeting without a chairman and without a vice chairman, actually, and without 2 members on there. And so he said he needed to put it on there so we could go ahead and take care of that so that when they do meet, before we meet again, then they would have a full committee. And that's why he wanted to put it on there. And there are times when stuff like that has came up where if we're tied to that 2 week time frame, then we may, because of a meeting or because of when we skip meetings, it may be something that we can't do.
Yeah, but
you know, just like that when
you knew that they needed to be reappointed at the end of the orchestra at the last meeting. You could have made that announcement 2 weeks prior to today.
I don't keep up with that.
Yes, you can. You were at the meeting. You were at the first meeting of the orchestra.
I may have, but
so at that time you could have made it
on a daily basis. I don't.
All I'm saying is we need to have a 2 week period to advertise for vacancies. And you're saying you disagree.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, and what I'm going to make a motion for is to amend it to this one that I wrote up, and I don't know. Yeah, there it is. So I'm going to make a motion to amend it.
There's already a motion on the floor, Mr. Chairman. There's already a motion on the floor.
Yeah, there's a motion for the approval of this policy that Barry's got on here.
Right.
I'm going to amend that and add this one in replacement of it.
And which one?
The one that's on the thing right now. And all it says, well, it can be read there, but that we will advertise it on the Facebook and on the listserv every quarter, which is not exactly what we're doing now, but we should. And whenever it's known that a vacancy will be occurring. As soon as Bob knows a vacancy's coming up, then he can put it out on the website and on the talent, on the listserv and all that. And it will link people over to that form that they have to fill out so that we all have the same form. We don't have resumes on some and forms on the other. We all got the same form on everybody. And then that thing will be on file for 24 months. And then at the end of that time, Bob or the town or whoever will let those people know their thing is expiring. And if they want to renew, they reapply. If they don't want to, they don't want to. But to me, it makes it more, it doesn't bind us to trying to do something if Bob forgets or whatever. But anyway, that's my motion. Is there...
I need to ask you a question.
He has to second his motion first. Get a second on it.
If I second the motion, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Good. Okay. The only difference.
So you second it?
Yeah. Now I'm going to ask a question.
Okay.
The only difference between this one and Barry's is quarterly, we're gonna put the thing on the internet, the talent pool form, or
Well,
tell people if you want
I
to
would do
apply
a
for
little
anything.
advertisement on there. It
I
says,
think that's a good idea.
do it every 3 months, and then anytime he knows the vacancy's coming up,
To put it
he'll
on.
do it on there as well.
Or somebody's terms expire.
Or somebody's terms
Yeah.
expiring or whatever.
What's wrong with telling them 2 weeks, holding it out for 2 weeks as their term's expiring?
Because even like today, we would not be able to appoint people to that seats before we meet again. And they're going to meet.
That's fine. I mean, it's 2 weeks. It's not a long time to garner applications, to garner people to submit, I guess, talent pool forms.
I think it is when we're doing it all the time and there's stuff in the file and there's names there.
But you don't pull the names out the file.
Yeah, we do.
No,
Bob,
you don't. There was a person who applied for this planning commission
Bob sent him out here. Yes, he
2
made a
years
mistake.
ago,
I
and you
understand.
never even considered his name. So, I mean,
What name was that?
what's his name? Clint?
I don't know about that name. Now, if
He
Bob
knows
just
about
won
it. It
or
was
something.
on the 15th meeting, on the December 15th meeting in 2015. Clint Scoville put an application in for the planning commission. Now he didn't get the position because I believe Brent Chitwood got it. But
No,
his
Brent
name was
Chitwood
on
got
it.
it. Ed Wadlington was nominated by you.
I nominated Ed Waddington.
Well, and Clint Scoville was nominated also.
No, I didn't.
No.
I nominated
Clint,
Ed.
it was on the video. Clint Scoville was nominated. He had an application out
The
there. But
last
that's okay.
meeting? Wait, at the last meeting,
No, 2015, 2015.
2015,
Yeah, I know, but that's my point. It's that the man had put an application in, and he wasn't considered again because we didn't know he wanted to still do it or not.
And maybe Bob talked to him and he didn't. I don't know, but I got the minutes
you're
right
guessing.
here from that meeting.
Now you're guessing. It's not unreasonable to say, hey, you got an opening 2 weeks out here. We got an opening coming up. We'd like for people to submit applications or submit talent pool applications.
This is 17 meeting. That's the wrong one.
well, I think this has good points, and I think yours did. I think the 2-week thing is good if Bob can do it.
Well, if we do the other one, there's two things. The one that I just did goes into effect in January. The one that was on the table before that Barry did would go into effect tonight. So if it went into effect tonight and we passed it, we would not be able to appoint to the orchestra without doing 2 weeks. So
I see.
we have to make a change of that.
We're not passing anything tonight. This is just a discussion, is it not?
No,
No.
this is an approval.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
Or,
I'm
yeah, approval of the
skipping
policy.
down
Resolution.
myself.
Okay. No. Approval of policy.
Yeah.
But this is first reading.
Whatever.
No, it's just
Just
an
an approval.
approval.
Yeah.
It's a policy.
And right now we have this one on the table, which is the Mayor King proposal, whatever they call it. And then it goes into effect January 2019.
Well,
It
we
allows
have to approve that. We haven't approved
Yeah,
that. We got
it
mine
allows
on
for
the table.
3 months. Every 3 months, it's been put on the listserv and the, whatever the other one is, the Facebook page. And then we're just advertise. If you're interested in serving in any of these boards, blah, 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 blah. You
Well,
click here and it goes to that thing, you fill out the form and it's done.
Is the only problem with Mr. Walker's the 2 weeks?
The 2 weeks,
And
yeah, I'm not,
today,
yeah.
tonight.
Then why don't we,
And then the 12
his-
months.
with his agreement, have a date put on his that says it will take effect January 2nd, 2019. And
That's
that will-
fine.
And we will take care of any appointments tonight and not have to worry about it.
So you're saying not to do it every quarter.
No.
No, I think we'll
do
do
it
that too.
Every 2 weeks. Put out 2 weeks. Look, if it's about applying about an appointment to the orchestra commission tonight, I don't have a problem with that. We can go ahead and make that appointment tonight. Seeing that, I don't know if has anybody applied for the orchestra commission besides Larry and
Yeah, we got to.
Yeah, we got.
There's 4 things in there.
Four people?
They were in your packet.
I didn't get a packet. I don't know. But anyway, okay, that's fine. So again, the policy from here out would be that we advertise for a minimum of 14 days, 2 weeks.
And not do it on the quarterly.
I think
No, when you get a vacancy, whenever the vacancy comes up, you advertise 2 weeks from on Facebook and the website, or listserv, as you call it. That's not unreasonable. Let folks know that there's a vacancy and that we're looking for applications or looking for resumes.
we could add quarterly to that and change the date to January, and we'd have the best of both worlds.
All right, so then
I don't know
vote this
what-
one down, because we're already on that one, so you got to vote it down.
Which one?
The one that we're on right now, which is this, Mayor King one, because we made a
Mayor
motion
King,
second.
okay, because I'm.
So we need to vote
okay.
that one down then,
Okay, because I was looking at,
and then go back to that one and amend it and add what you want to add.
All right.
all right.
Is that what you're, okay. All in favor then of the amendment, which is the, I'm gonna call it Mayor Hardy King or Mayor King proposal, do so with show of hands. I still like it. All opposed? All right. All right, now, we're back to this one.
Yeah.
What amendments do you want to add to this one?
I want to add that the quarterly sentence that you had in the last one, no less than 2 weeks, right after website. I forgot what the sentence was.
Proposal. No.
Well, you could say this, all boards, and if you want to say committees, commissions, whatever, will be advertised on town Facebook listserv every quarter.
And 2 weeks before,
Appointments.
And vacancies will be advertised for no less than 2 weeks, 14 days before
Right.
appointments can
That's
be
it.
made.
and this will take effect January, okay. You still writing?
I'm just,
January 2019?
No, January 2nd or something, wasn't it?
January 1st, 2019.
Okay.
So let me read that. All boards, committee, commissions will be advertised on town Facebook page, listserv every quarter, and vacancies, would that be right, vacancies?
Yeah? VAC.
Vacancies will be advertised for no less than 2 weeks before appointments can be made. Advertisements at a minimum can be made on town Facebook and/or website in conjunction with, well, let's talk about that resume thing, because we've had things before where people would send us in whatever they wrote down, a resume or whatever, and then we've had the applications, and we're trying to compare apples to apples.
Well, if we're going to stick with the talent application, then we can take the resumes out.
Well, it says this in conjunction with the receiving the resumes, an application can be,
Or just say an
filled out.
application must be filled out.
must be, yes.
Okay.
All right, must be. An
So now we're
application-
saying that you can't get on the board or commission unless you have a talent pool application. That's not what we said originally.
Yeah, and that way we all had the same form to compare on everybody.
I mean, that's fine. We can
But
encourage
they
them
can
to
do
do
the
that.
resume, but they still need to fill out that form so we can compare apples to apples.
Okay.
And then all talent pool forms will be kept on 12 months. Is everybody happy with that? I think that's kind of short, but
I think you should go for a longer period.
2
I
years.
think
24?
you should go 24 months.
2
24?
years. 24.
Yeah, but we're not going to go back to 2 years, 24 months to look at somebody's talent pool application. They may not still be living in town. They may not be here.
Bob
12
normally
months is
contacts them
fine.
and make sure they still
Contact.
He contacts them before.
are ready and willing.
Okay, did you contact Clint Scoville? Did you contact Clint Scoville about the planning commission open?
That'd be in 2015.
That's exactly my point. I mean,
That's 2015 now.
that's exactly my point.
And we didn't have a talent pool then.
And we didn't have a
Yes, we-
policy. We didn't have the policy.
We didn't have a policy then, but we did have a talent pool.
Yeah, we had to
I
talent
know
pool.
that
was
Bob
in
now
15.
contacts people
Yeah.
before it's put on there. I know that.
Somebody put an application or put a talent pool request in or application in 12 months ago. You know, it is not unreasonable to say to them, call them up and say, hey, are you still interested in doing whatever you were actually filled out for? After 12 months, I mean, if it's a yes or no, if it's a yes, then fine. We just make sure his application is activated again or reactivated or whatever. If it's no, I'm moving out of town, or no, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to do something else, then that's
Well,
fine.
I think if you
12 months is enough. I mean, most of the terms expire every 12 months, don't they? Every 2 years, 3 years.
On some.
Okay.
And the only thing too is on that 12 month, I think a lot of them would be expiring, or people is going to forget, and they don't renew it. And then we look in that thing, we ain't got names. We're trying to get names in there. We need to keep the names that are there in there. Bob is going to call them no matter what and contact them before he submits it to us to make sure they're always, you know, he's done that all the time as far as I know. Contacted people and said, you still want to serve on this committee? We got a vacancy coming up and your name's in the pool. I just want to ask you. Sometimes they don't respond. Sometimes they do, you know. But I still think 24 months, we can do, I don't know what's halfway between, 18?
18 months?
I think 24 is good because it gives it a little bit of time before it runs out. But
whatever.
I think 24 is good. I mean, I really do, because I think we're looking for names.
Yeah, we are.
We're not
always trying to
do away
get
with names.
I want to do away with this anyway. I mean, to be honest with you.
Do it.
Just advertise for openings. I mean, that's.
We never got any when we did that in the years past.
Yeah, we didn't.
Never. Everybody.
Well, we got a whole bunch. You got a whole bunch for this time, but we didn't even consider them. So, I mean, you're talking about years past. You got more people interested in being on boards and commissions now.
All right. So, do we want to leave the 12? I want to change it to 24. So, I'm gonna just make a motion to change to 24.
I second 24.
And any discussion? All in favor of that? 24. All right. So we're back to, let me make sure we got this right. All boards, committees, commission, advertised, Facebook, listserv, every quarter, and vacancies when vacancies will be advertised for no less than 2 weeks, 14 days, before appointments can be made. Advertisements at a minimum can be made on the town Facebook page, website, in conjunction with receiving resumes. An application must be filled out via the town talent pool form. All talent pool forms will be kept on file for 24 months, after which time an updated form must be submitted. And this goes into effect January 1st, 2019. So we all in favor of all that, do so with show of hands. What I want to do now.
So that's our policy now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, starting January 1st.
Yeah. And before we make these appointments, I want to make a motion to suspend the rules, bring discussions on procedures up so that we can discuss that and go over the ways, make sure that we're all aware of the different ways we can make appointments, and then make the appointments. So I'm going to make a motion to suspend the rules and bring item 12A and do it now. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on just that? All in favor then of suspending the rules and bringing 12A up, do so a show of hand. I have gone through that Robert's Rules and gone through and talked to Municipal Association and others to kind of get a better understanding of what is or which are the proper ways for us to make nominations or appointments. And technically, before I get into this thing here, we can make nominations all day long. What we're here to do is make appointments because that's what's on our agenda. If we had a nominating committee and they wanted to make nominations and then submit them to the town, that's one thing. But we're here to actually make appointments. We can make nominations, and at some time we still got to make an appointment. But there are 4 ways that are in the Roberts Rules that do not conflict with state law. Some of the ways they talk about ballots, how we can vote by ballot. We can't do that. State law requires us to vote in the way that the public can tell who we're voting for and how we're voting for. State law requires us, each and every one, to vote on each thing put before the council. And we only have 1 vote per item. So there's different things on there. But the ones that we could do, the first one is called nominations by the chair, where the presiding officer chair makes nominations. As I said on there, that's possible, but probably not passable. And I myself wouldn't even want to do that. And if I were serving, I wouldn't agree to that. So that's really not an option. Nominations from the floor, and that means from the council members, not from the whole floor, but just from the elected body. A motion has to be made to open the floor for nominations by a council member. Once, unless they say, like tonight, it would be made to make nominations to the Planning Commission. It has to have a second, and then it is open for debate and discussion. Once the discussion is over, then we have to vote on opening the floor, because that's what the motion was for. Once the floor is open and it's been approved by the majority of council, the nominations can be made by each council member. You can only nominate 1 per person, per seat open. If, like tonight, there's 2 seats open, each council member can nominate 2 people. If there's only 1 seat open, each council member can only nominate 1 person. There is no second required doing it that way. And then once all the nominations been made by any council member that wants to make one, then the nominations are closed. Then you got to vote. And there's a couple different ways in there of voting, but in order for us to follow the law and vote in public and all those things, the 2 that are available is the roll call, where I would call a council member's name. That council member would say, here's the name I support. And if there's one
Say it again,
seat,
please.
I'd call your name, so to speak, and you would say whoever you want to vote for. You'd call that name out. There's no yay and nay. It's just voting for the member you want to put in that seat. All 5 council members vote, and the one that gets 3 votes wins. The problem with that is, as well, if every council member nominates 1 name, we could be here all night because everybody's going to vote for their 1 name, and there's not a necessarily good way of doing it. In some bodies and some ways it may be. But all 5 council members would call a name, and then whoever gets majority, if somebody does, would be voted in. If they don't, you just keep doing it until somebody gives up and calls uncle. The other way is that when you get through the nominations, you do the voice. The chair calls out the nominations in the order that they were made, and then you vote on each one. All in favor of Joe, you raise your hand. All in favor. And if somebody gets 3 votes on this council, because there's 5, that thing is full. You don't vote on anybody else. If there's 2 seats, you call out 1 name, you fill that seat, and vote on the names until it gets full, and then you go to the next name and you vote on that until it gets full. So there's some good way of doing it that way. There's some bad way. You can only nominate 1 person. And at the same time, if everybody nominates 1 name, you're kind of stuck. The other way is to make a motion to nominate a person or persons if it's 1 or 2 people or 1 or 2 seats. We're making a motion to nominate. We're not appointing anybody, and we're here to appoint. So really that's not a good way, because once you make the nominations, now somebody has to make a motion to appoint person A, person B, person C, and then we're stuck back to the appointment process, and anybody can amend that motion and add other names. So it's kind of a repeat of everything. The second one, or the last one, is the motion to appoint person A or person A and B or whatever to multiple seats. It does require a second because it's a motion. You do debate it and discuss it. If a person makes a motion to appoint one person, or if there's 2 seats like tonight, 2 names, once it gets a second and you start the discussion, anybody else can make another motion to amend. And they can add names or replace names. They can make a motion to take those 2 names away and put them into this name. Or they can make a motion to add 2 more names. It does have to have a second because it is a motion, and it does have the majority of vote to add those names. If it does get a majority of vote, now you have all those names. And once everybody is through making amendments to add names and to the appointment process, then you vote on them in order that they were done. Again, either by roll call or by, and in this manner, since you may have more nominations, or more names, I won't call them nominations, it's better to do the voice in my matter, where you call out a name in order and then you say yea or nay. And you go down that list of names until somebody gets 3 yeas. And if you have multiple seats, then you do it again to get that seat full, and do it again until you get that, if you have a. So those are the 3 that according to, and you know, council as a whole, I think years ago did it a little bit differently. The problem is when you have a council that is very amenable and agreeable, you can probably do it a lot of different ways if everybody's fine. But if somebody wants to start questioning how we did it, then you pretty much got to go by the rules and do it that way, and this is the way that it says. If anybody wants to, read that book and go over stuff and figure it out better and come back to another meeting another day and say, hey, this is another option, hey, I'm all willing to listen and learn too.
So you're saying this is a Robert's rule or
Robert's
South Carolina state law?
Well, it's Robert's rules, but state law says we as council members have to vote in public in a way for people to see us. So we can't do the balloting, and we can't do some of those other ways that they talk about. You write it down on a piece of paper, or you go vote in a box, and then you pull out the names and you count them. We can't do that stuff because that's not the law. The law says, the state law says we have to vote in public. So, after saying all that, I will sum it down into 2 things. The nominations from the floor is one way. It has some troubles with if everybody, and we have done this before where we had a situation, I can't remember what it was, where we were voting on a position, and we got there all night, because we had 2 votes, 2 votes, 2 votes, 2 votes, 2 votes, and it just kept on and on and on. And that's kind of a problem with doing it that way. The appointment process is what's on the agenda to appoint, so you're skipping the nominations and going right to appointments, and then everybody can make appointments. They all do have to have seconds and affirmative majority vote and all that good stuff. Anyone wants to dive in right now, and that is discussed. If you got any questions on this, or we'll go over that, and then we'll go to the appointment.
So which way are we going to follow? Are we going to follow Robert's rules, or are we going
This
to
is
not?
Robert's rules. Oh,
No, you said this was South Carolina state law.
no, this is Robert's rules. There are about 5 or 6 ways in Robert's rules to make appointments. We don't do the committees, and we can't do ballots. So these are the 4 that are kind of left that do meet state law as well. If we had a nominating committee, we could let them make that, and then they'd come back with a recommendation and all that, but we don't have that. So my best interpretation is do the motion to appoint, and then you start adding names. But I will leave that open to anybody that wants to make a motion right now to either make a motion to appoint, make a motion to nominate, make a motion make nominations from the floor, or you can leave it up to me and I'll do nominations by the chair.
I'll make a motion to appoint.
And let me get to this thing. Appoint who and whom or whatever.
Yeah, I want to make a motion to appoint Larry Slaughter and John Lindauer.
Larry and John. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right.
Okay.
I want
to make a motion to.
But let him go first on this, and then Julius, and we can do amendments.
Okay.
So,
I think those 2 gentlemen have done an incredible job, and I'm thankful for the work that everyone on that commission has done. When I ran, we were losing money like crazy each and every year. During that campaign, things changed. Bob took it over, and then Larry, you came on, and I think you did an incredible job, and are still doing an incredible job. So,
I second everything Mark has said about Larry and John. I've been to some of their meetings. The results speak for themselves. I've lived in Irmo since 1986. The Okra Strut at one time had a paid person who headed the Okra Strut. And I believe we got a sheet from Bob that listed how much money the Okra Strut cost the town for 10 years prior to 2015. And during those 10 years, the Okra Strut one time netted $235. Had red ink close to $190,000. The year Bob and his staff ran the Okra Strut, I don't remember exactly how much, but it was around $1,000 was made. The first year, Larry and his group took over, and these are volunteers. They don't get paid. That's the thing about our committees and our boards. They don't get paid. They give up their time and do this job. And I believe the first year it was $22,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, Larry.
Something in that range.
And every year since, it's either been more or the same. So I can't mess up something that works. If it, as the old fella used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's not broken.
I'd like to make a motion to amend and add Kimberly Snipes and Michelle Carpenter.
All right, so Barry's
And this is, again, Larry, you guys have done a great job, and I appreciate that. And I'm just curious to know, how does one get on these boards and commissions?
Well, let's.
Can I finish, please? How does one get on boards and commissions? Can I
second.
finish, please?
No, you made a motion. It needs to be seconded.
Can I finish talking, please?
That's,
I'm making a motion. I would like to finish making my motion.
That's not part of the motion. The motion was to appoint Kimberly.
I'll let you argue with me. Go ahead.
And
cut me
Michelle
off.
Carpenter.
Thank you, sir.
Michelle Carpenter.
And Michelle Carpenter, yeah, and Kimberly.
The first name?
Kimberly.
Michelle Carpenter and Kimberly Snipes.
Okay.
So is there a second? All right. So there's no second.
So my question is, how does one
Right, we're
get
back
on
into
to
that,
it?
so you can ask the question now. We're back under the other thing.
I appreciate the work they've done, but how does people get on these boards and commissions without having somebody die? I mean.
Okay.
All right.
This.
You through?
Yeah. This one case, and I don't mean this with regard to any other committee, but this one, if we threw Larry Slaughter and John Lindauer off, we'd be stupid.
No, I'm not saying throw them off. How does
saved
people get on boards and commissions if we just keep doing the same thing?
Any other spot, and I would have nominated Jada.
Well, and I will add
I'm
this.
not doing that. I'm saying that because she's.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody that wants to serve on the Oak Strut, they also have non-voting positions that they appoint that we don't appoint. And you can also volunteer whether you're a non-voting member or a voting member.
These are voting positions we're talking about here, right? Yeah.
But they also have non-voting positions that they can fill with anybody that wants to serve under that position. There's no limit on how many non-voting members. And to answer your question too, We've been through this. You've been serving since 04 and now 5. I think you're in 3. It's the same thing. We've talked about term limits before. You brought it up. I brought it up. Nobody's ever put it on the agenda. We've had discussions before when there were some people on the Planning Commission many years ago, and we wanted to put some new names on there. And you yourself nominated some of the people that had been on there for years back to it. It's, you know, I mean, we can sit there and say how. All you have to do is find somebody willing to serve, appoint them, and if they get a second and get a majority vote, they're done. It's better when there's vacancies than when you're trying to appoint people that have been on there and doing a good job. I can remember the people that served on the Orchestra Commission many years were reappointed, and you approved them as well. So it's kind of insincere to sit there and say that we're doing anything different that you yourself have done 4 years on this same
It's not insincere.
commission.
It's just, I'm asking the question, how do people get on boards and commissions?
They have to turn in their name and get appointed and get it voted on.
Well, you had 3 people turn in their names, and they can't even get a second to get nominated.
If 5 council members have made up their mind who they want it on or whatever, then
let's go on, because
that's
I'll
life.
be here all night arguing with you. I don't want to do that.
All right, so there's 2 names, Larry Slaughter and John Lindover. And any other motions? Any other amendments? Any other discussion? All in favor then of those 2 names, do so a show of hands. So that's all of that. Next is, I can't hardly read this thing anymore, presentation by citizens. This is the time anyone wants to address us on anything.
Going back to the agenda?
Huh?
We're back to the agenda now?
Yes.
Yeah, presentation by citizens.
Okay.
All we ask is you come to the name and our podium and give us your name and address for the record.
George Glassmer, 110 Beck Road. I'd like to first get back to the Mr. Walker's question as to how somebody gets on.
Can you talk to that mic, please?
I am. I'm doing. Is that
Thank
better?
you.
Yeah.
Much better.
Thank you. Perhaps term limits is the answer, but to, as the mayor just pointed out, to enact term limits, somebody's got to put it on the agenda to get this council to consider that change. So that would be one solution. As to why apparently the same people keep getting reappointed, Mr. Walker, I would submit to you that's called democracy in action, because a majority of council votes for that person. Now, I do want to set the record straight on something. When this issue came up at the last meeting as to appointments, Mr. Walker, as he's all too frequently done, tried to deflect responsibility, because when the issue came up as to how the talent book came about, as I recall, the mayor and suggested that it was Mr. Walker's idea, and I'm certain of that because I was at that meeting, and it was Mr. Walker's initiative that the talent book got created. And I remember at the last meeting, Mr. Walker questioned the mayor as to whether Mr. Walker voted on this or not. And at the direction of council, it's my understanding that the town administrator researched the minutes for that particular meeting, and sure enough, it turns out that Mr. Walker was present at that meeting. He voted on that issue, and the vote was unanimous to enact the talent book. So yes, Mr. Walker, you did vote on that, at least according to the town administrator. Now, the next thing I want to say is I want to commend council for once again making something which, at least to me, seems so simple. You've tried to make it very complicated, and you're taking a tremendous amount of time on something that could be easily dispensed with. Let's think about this for a moment. The various committees that have vacancies, which is, I think, would be the ZBA, the Planning Commission, and Orchestra. If I'm missing one, please forgive me. Those vacancies, absent somebody dying, moving out of town, or submitting an impromptu resignation, the vast majority of them come up when that term expires. And it seems to me that that would be very easy to project out a year in advance every committee and every vacancy that's expiring, and just ask the administrator to put a list on the website and on Facebook if you want, and send out an email on listserv for the next year. Every one of these vacancies on these respective committees will be coming vacant. If you are interested, submit an application now on the town talent book, so we don't keep going through this and making something easy complicated. Just publish the list in advance for a year for all the projected vacancies when they're going to expire. You're making this difficult. Please consider that as an option. And now I want to look at an item that's further down on the agenda, item 12C, discussion on car break-ins and increasing police patrol that, according to the agenda, is a proposal by Mr. Walker. Yes, according to the news media, there's been an increase in car break-ins. I don't think Irmo has that market cornered. I think it's all over the Midlands. Moreover, I'm satisfied that our chief and our law enforcement officers are more familiar with those stats and the dynamic of that problem than Mr. Walker or anybody else in this room, including me. I think it's improper for Mr. Walker to try to micromanage the police department and tell the chief or the administrator how to dedicate police resources as far as increasing patrols. That's their business. He's not neither qualified to do that, nor is it his responsibility to do that. If he's not satisfied with the performance of the police department, then I think what he needs to do is call for an executive session and take the town administrator to task for not directing the police department in a way that suits the majority of council. And that's the way to address that, not to try to micromanage the chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, down on 172 Stone Column Way. I just want to comment on that discussion about the qualified. I like Bob Brown. I think a lot of him, he's got great qualities, but I don't think he is in a position to be an arbiter of who has a handicap and who doesn't. That's primarily a doctor's decision. If somebody comes to us and says they want to do something because they're handicapped and the doctor says they're handicapped, I think that's the end of the story. If there's a reason to question it, there still shouldn't just be one person who has final authority. There should always be a sounding board. And one of the things this town needs is a group of people who act as, I never can say the word ombudsman, without any real authority or anything, but just to discuss things. If this thing with Ms. Witt would have been discussed, we could have avoided all this outcome. Great people on ZBA, but that doesn't mean they're always right. If there were 6 or 8 people who sat down with them and said, hey, this is a special situation, it could have been resolved in 5 minutes. And go back to the Ms. Witt thing. There was discussion that she's not handicapped because she's got a temporary tag in her car. That has no bearing on it. My wife is losing her eyesight. She had a temporary sticker, and the state told her she couldn't drive a car any longer. It doesn't mean that she's going to be well in 6 months. We wish that were the case. We hope that the deterioration is slow. But that's not a Bob Brown decision. That's not a council decision. And what does it mean to be handicapped? An old guy that can't hear, he's handicapped. That doesn't mean that he needs a wheelchair lift or something. So there's got to be some reasonableness to it. And just to say, yeah, he's handicapped and yes, he can go ahead and do anything, that isn't the answer. There should be a decision, always err on the side of being conservative, but use some reasonableness. And that can only be accomplished if we get many people involved in it. 5 great people up here on the dais, but that doesn't mean they're always going to make the right decision. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
May I ask him a question? It's quick. Mr. Donlin. Mr. Donlin.
Speak up.
I'm sorry. You think Bob should ask for a doctor's note? Is that what you're saying? I want to understand what you're saying.
I'm saying the decision whether somebody is handicapped
Should be
is a medical decision.
Right.
And it's for a doctor to decide.
Okay.
I don't think I have the ability as a layperson.
Me either.
I don't think Bob does. And I don't think we should ask him to make that decision. It puts him in an unfair situation.
Asking for a medical letter would be, okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you.
never stood up in Citizens United twice in a night, but I'm Larry Slaughter. And I just briefly wanted to say, there actually have been a couple, just in my tenure recent on the commission, of filling positions. And in all those times, we as the commission, I don't think anything you did tonight makes a difference in this, but we passed a resolution asking you to appoint someone. That both times that's Commissioner Randy Jones and John Lindauer himself. As a matter of fact, they filled unexpired terms. They both had served as volunteers. They both had been non-voting commissioners for a period of time. So from our perspective, we like to recommend you guys can ignore our recommendation and vote someone else. Maybe that's certainly your prerogative. But from our perspective, we try to give you names of folks that have worked with us and have been there for a few years and kind of know how they're going. So that was just let you know that as an answer to your question.
We don't have a problem with any of the people you got working with us. I just want to make sure the people that apply get an opportunity to serve.
Bring them on.
Yeah, that's all.
Seeing no one else, next item is we've already done the discussion on the procedures. The next is the discussion on the quorum. It has been mentioned, I want to say over the past, about some of the stuff, and yes, we're all guilty up here of doing a lot of things as far as interrupting. There has been names called from here. I think I can remember one of the citizens that's sitting in the audience who was called a name a while back. I know some council members up here have been called some names. And we can go over who's guilty, why we're guilty, I'm guilty, we're all guilty. But, and I'm going to just say something to you.
I'm listening.
When you ask to do something that technically we can't do, it opens the door for somebody else to technically ask. And like the lady said earlier, if I let one do it, I should let them all. And that's where the problem comes, because you start opening that door, and then I have to make a decision to allow one and not somebody else, and then it starts getting difficult.
But I was trying to understand what he wanted us to do. I'm sorry, but I
mean,
know
I'm
now.
just,
Mr. Mayor.
We tried to, over the years, let me finish, have some slack, you might say, rules to a certain regard, but at the same time, we used to get along better. It's real easy to do that when you're being respectful. It's hard to do that when somebody is interrupting somebody and it's getting out of line. We have to remember, not only is people in the audience listening, people on TV or wherever the thing goes are listening, but Renee is also trying to make minutes. And if we're up here talking all at one time and people in the audience are talking back there, it's hard for her to hear stuff. Maybe that's why she thought unanimously we all voted for something when, I don't know. But I'm just saying that's something we need to check our motives, our heart, whatever you want to call it. Think about it over the holidays. And come January, let's try to do a better job of being respectful for one another. I think one of the easier things to do is let one person speak and let them finish before the next person. If you think something is out of order, you can call a point of order. You can interrupt the speaker for that. If you don't hear something or didn't understand something, you can call a point of information and ask them to speak up or whatever.
That's what I'll do.
But we just need to, all of us have a duty and a responsibility, and I don't want to say it's like reading a 400-page ADA thing, but reading Robert's Rules is probably worse. It's some of it's applicable to church groups and boards and Boy Scout groups and stuff and banks and whatever else. Some of it is applicable to elected bodies, and in different states they do different things different ways. But we have to not only recognize what the Robert's Rule says, what our ordinance says, but also whatever state law says. I like that idea of voting in a ballot. Nobody knows how I vote. I just put somebody's name down, we put them in the hat, pull them out. But the state law says we can't do that because that's not transparent, and citizens have a right to know how each council member voted. Some of these things as far as the appointment process, I think the previous mayor did it a certain way, and everybody agreed. Maybe that's the way everybody's been doing it. But at some point, it's kind of like the 80 thing. When somebody tells you that's wrong, you go, oh, why? And then we ask, and then they tell us. We have to make a decision to do it right. And, you know, same thing here. We just need to do a better job of being respectful for one another. And at the same time to the audience, I'll add that. When we're up here trying to communicate and people in the audience are talking, it's hard for me to hear, because I don't hear that good either. And frankly, I can't see that good either. But if I'm trying to listen and everybody else is, I get distracted. I get distracted real easy. I spoke to someone the other day about that. I mean, if somebody's up here talking, I'm looking at them, and somebody moves or makes a face in the audience, I'm probably going to start wondering what they're thinking and doing, and then I miss everything. That's why I have to write notes. I can write and remember as opposed to hearing it. It goes in one ear and out the other. Somebody can tell me their name 15 times. I won't remember it. I write it. So, but we have to be respectful for one another. And that's all I want to talk about is let's try to, we've had those things we got out a couple of years ago that came from, I think, the Municipal Association council meeting decorum. It goes over all that stuff. We need to look at that. You know, if we're respectful of one another and I interrupt Barry or Barry interrupts me or you interrupt, it's easy to accept it. But when you get in this thing, then it gets to be no, no, no. And if I tell Barry he can't interrupt me and then you do or whatever, that's not right. But you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say, look at that face. How could you not let her speak?
Well, and that's the thing. She's a woman, and you're supposed to be more respectful. And I know you can change your prerogative or your prerogative change your mind, but
I'll say point of information from now on.
Yeah.
But
it just
if
helps.
I hadn't asked him, he left.
So we all agreed that we kind of need to do a better job to whatever. Any other discussion by anybody on that? Seeing none. Next is the car break-in thing, and Mr. Walker, I'll let you start on that.
Yeah, we had I guess a lot of alleged break-ins are happening in town, and one of our citizens had decided he was going to form a crime watch, or I don't know what they call them. He calls them neighborhood watch or whatever. He's going around at night, and he's patrolling neighborhoods and helping the police, I believe. But the concern I have is that if he decides to follow somebody and they get spooked, you know, I don't want a situation to unfold like Trayvon Martin's situation here in Irmo. So I asked the chief, you know, would he be prepared to tell me, you know, what was the number of break-ins we've had over the last year as opposed to last couple of years? And Chief, have you figured out that answer for me?
Yes, sir. Council, we had, going back to 2015, in 2015 we had 91, 2016 we had 102, 2017 we had 89, and so far this year we've had 111. I mean, around 100 is what we've been averaging. And to take those numbers in perspective, in 2015, 22 of the cars that were broken into out of the 91 were forced entry. 69 of them, there was no force used to get in the car, which means it was either unlocked or the windows were down or whatever. 2016, out of the 102, 81, no force was used to get in. Out of the 2017, out of the 89, 72, no force was used. And out of the 111 so far, 83, no force was used to get into the vehicle. I'm taking the biggest subdivision I've got, which is New Friars Gate. That is one of the biggest subdivisions, is the biggest subdivision that we patrol. 2015, we had 36 car break-ins, 27 no force. 2017, we had 31, 24 of those were no force used. 2017, 39, 36 were no force used. In 2018, we had 36, 35 no force used so far.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the majority of these break-ins were just people leaving their cars open and people are going through them. They're not breaking windows, they're not using Slim Jims to.
Well, that's the thing. No forced is the owner couldn't tell us that the car was
Locked
forced into.
Okay.
So it was either unlocked or a Slim Jim was used or
Right.
some kind of other means was used to get in, but we had no forced. We could not locate any force. I understand. I've watched some of the news. I've seen some of the other communities talking about car break-ins going up. On average, we're averaging about where we normally would be. We might be a little up than normal, but our biggest subdivision we have, we're actually down from last year. So, it's not an epic. I don't want to. Well, I'm not even going to say that. Let me just knock on some wood. But we've been very fortunate here in the Irmo community to not have a huge problem with car break-ins. Yes, sir.
You said, I think this year there were 111. 36, I think you said, came from our biggest neighborhood, whatever.
New Friarsgate.
Where are the rest coming from? Like car parking lots and
Sure, yeah.
other neighborhoods mixture? Or
Our next biggest is Newtown, and that's anything in Richland County that's not a subdivision.
Oh.
So we're talking about Move Fitness, we're talking about YMCA, Walmart, all those areas. And it's funny you said that. Out of Newtown, 24 car break-ins, and only 6 of those were no force, so 18 were force was used to get into the car.
18 was forced.
Were broken windows.
So
out of 24.
If they're at a business, it
Like
looks like they're
Walmart.
locked and people are breaking a window or something to get
Correct.
in. But
Yep.
in
Like
the
ladies,
homes,
like say a lady has an SUV and she goes to the gym. I'm only going to give you this is what we run into mainly. A woman gets out of the car, throws her purse in the back of the car, walks inside. Somebody in the parking lot sees that, walks up, busts a window, takes the purse, and they're gone. Unfortunately, gyms are our big problem because SUVs are extremely popular. There's nowhere really to lock anything up in an SUV. And women don't want to take their purses inside the gym, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
They don't have cameras in the parking lot of the
They have
gym?
some cameras, but I'm not going to say how great their camera system is, but we haven't been very successful with it.
Mm-hmm. So the lesson from this is lock your cars, right?
Hide your purse somewhere.
Put your purse in the garage or your trunk or whatever.
Yeah. Don't have anything in your car that you don't want someone to have.
Yeah.
That's just our biggest take on this. Locks are locks only keep out honest people. If I want to break in your house, I'm going to break in your house.
But so far as the citizens going around and patrolling the neighborhoods, they need to see something. They need to call 911 to let you guys know, and don't take action on their own.
That's correct.
To intercede with somebody walking on the street.
That's correct.
Don't take that initiative to stop somebody.
That's right.
Just if you see something, call, lock your doors, help us out, help the police out.
That's right.
Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement, yes, sir.
And on an aside, you might want to help yourself out because most insurance companies do not cover cars that don't show forced entry.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, it's just not here. I saw on next door, whatever, Friars Gate. Of course, it covers more than that. But it was another neighborhood out here on Broad River Road, not in our town. And both of their cars got in
Broken
one
into.
night.
I saw
And the
that.
guy even admitted they didn't lock it.
They were locked.
The neighborhood back over here on Fire Tower Road behind that handbell place, whatever it's called. I think it's Ashford or Ashley Oaks or something. And it's been a while back. But a lady had mentioned that they took her cell phone and took her purse, and the car wasn't locked. And I think you'd even mentioned somebody had drove off with one and made it to the end of the driveway or something. I didn't know women didn't take their purse, but I guess evidently, like you say, if they go into a gym, they don't. I just thought they took it everywhere they went. But yeah, and I think those gyms, you can rent stuff, but you can't guarantee that you put it in a lock that it's not going to get gone.
My point in this discussion was just to make sure that citizens know that we need your help in preventing some of this stuff. Please call us. Call the police department if there's a problem. Lock your doors in your car. Lock your car, lock your home doors. you know, it's a two-way street. We need the community to come together and say, hey, we're going to try to prevent things like this from happening. And when you have this citizens patrols going around, you know, the citizen patrol are just the extended eyes of the police department. We'd like for y'all to call back if you see something. Don't take it upon yourself to stop somebody. Don't take it upon yourself to trail somebody that, you know, might have a hoodie on walking down the street in the middle of the night because he might look suspicious. If he does look suspicious to you, call. You know, don't approach people. I don't want folks to feel threatened by that. And I didn't want something like that, again, like the Trayvon situation that happened in our town. That's all I was just trying to get across. That's all I have.
Any other discussion on that? Next item is executive session and none known. I think we've had enough of them tonight. And next is adjournment. A motion for?
I so move.
Motion by Julius and seconded by Mark. All in favor of adjourning, do so by saying aye.
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 Thank you all.
Is the gentleman here that,
Right there?
no, the gentleman with that was going to do the neighborhood watch?
Oh,
Do you see
I don't know. I don't see him.